who knows? Maybe she was just excited about moving on with her life and putting college behind her.
These are the conversations that the true crime community is having, and you're giving a perspective as someone who is coming in fresh, looking at this information. So I'm going to play the next clip by Christine. Pull this up. The other lingering question that I have is, I wanted to know more about the DNA. I know the DNA is like some of the most powerful evidence, or if not the most powerful thing that they have. And of course, it's going to be attacked by the defense.
Yeah.
But there's also a mentioning of 2 unknown sources of male DNA. And we never really found out exactly what these samples were, like if they were blood DNA, contact DNA. It just wasn't said more than that. And so I went back trying to find where like resources for this, and I really could only find 2 in the small time that we were doing this research. One of them was Forbes, and I played a few clips from that at the beginning. They mentioned it, but they said that it was brought up by the defense attorney, Ann Taylor, during one of the hearings, and they showed clips of it. I'm assuming it's in the arrest affidavit, but when I was searching through the PDF, I couldn't find references to it. So I'm sure it's there. I just
references to the other DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't remember reading that in the affidavit.
Yeah, and so it's weird because she brings it up in court saying that it's in that, but then I have the affidavit and I couldn't find it when I kept searching through the document.
It's not in the affidavit.
But I think Christina Randall, I've paused like a 5-minute section from one of her videos where she actually does talk about the unidentified DNA and talks a little bit about the DNA. And we're going to listen to it until she gets into a little tangent on Kaylee Anthony. So here we go.
After it happened. And I am just like, okay, this should be a good place to let you guys know that everything in this video is going to be based on my own personal opinion. I'm just going to be speaking on things that is very, very public. The information is already out there, and I'm just giving y'all my unprofessional opinion. So go do your own research and form your own opinion. First of all, you guys, I know they are trying so hard, Bryan Kohberger's defense team, to get this DNA thrown out. Now, I have seen people online talking who feel like this touch DNA should not be included. But I have already told y'all, I absolutely think it should be included because it is one single source of DNA on that knife sheath, one on the button strap. If it was 10 people's DNA on that knife sheath and his just happened to be one single cell of touch, okay, maybe it was transferred accidentally by another person, but it was one person's and it was his. And I also believe that he thought he cleaned up everything. And I think also that while he is sitting there in court, deep down inside, he is mad that he left that one single cell of DNA behind. Because again, they found a single source DNA. It could have been anything. It could have been a skin fleck. It is such a small source of DNA on the button strap of the knife sheath. However, a lot of people were surprised to see that the defense brought up, and I'm going to put this all in my own words in layman's terms, by the way. The defense brought up the fact that the investigators / the prosecution had actually found multiple other DNA at the crime scene that belonged to other males other than Bryan Kohberger.
We have provided full discovery for the sheath, the DNA found on the knife sheath, but not the other 3 unidentified male DNA samples.
And they were basically being like, listen, there was other males' DNA found here. Y'all didn't dig into them. And again, I'm putting this totally in my own words. And the prosecution was like,
we have given the defense everything that we received from the lab. They'd asked for DNA workups on other people.
You know, because all of us, we know that this was a college house. There were teenagers, young adults, young men in and out of that house all the time. I mean, Ethan did not even live in this home, and he was there. He was a male. He was there. His friends were in and out. We all know that the girls had male friends in and out of the house. It would be shocking if there was not other male DNA found at the crime scene, meaning at the home. However, there was only one DNA that was found on the actual knife sheath that was used to end the students' lives. So that would naturally be the person that you would look for. Then when you go to look into that person, That's when you find the cell phone records and all of the other things that they found about Bryan Kohberger. Why dig into these other DNAs, again, that we know are going to be at the house anyways because of it being a college party house? And I think that this challenging of the other DNA that was found in the house, just in the house and in a glove somewhere outside by a neighbor, I think the reason why they are bringing this up is because this is strategy from Bryan Kohberger and his side. Do y'all remember when he was arrested back in January and he allegedly asked if anyone else was arrested too? And when they told him no, there was a quiet blank stare. It's almost like, and this is just my theory right now, he is playing a game with them, and he has been from the beginning. And all he has to do is create reasonable doubt that
Yep.
somebody else was there, or that the prosecution didn't do their full investigation and their job. And it seems like those seeds have been being planted from Bryan from the very beginning. I mean, who that gets arrested for something that they did not do, something as heinous as this, asks that type of question if you're not already trying to set up another narrative? The defense is seriously challenging this DNA. And the way that they're challenging it is because they want to know how the prosecution, exactly how they got that DNA sample from the knife sheath matched to him. The prosecution is basically saying like the genetic testing genealogy thing, you know, like a 23andMe or, you know, an ancestry.com, and it was linked to a family member and they narrowed it down, and then they were able to get Bryan Kohberger's father's DNA and match that. And then when he was arrested, they swabbed him and then boom, it was a match. It was him for sure. That's the way that I'm understanding it. But Bryan Kohberger's defense, and they brought in all of these specialists and stuff to testify, are really challenging the genetic part of it. And to me, it's like, why does that matter? When he goes to trial, they're not going to use the fact that he was matched with a 23andMe to find him guilty. They're going to use the fact that that DNA on the knife sheath matches Bryan Kohberger's DNA. When they swabbed him, it was basically a perfect match. But I get what Ann Taylor and them are trying to do. They're trying to find any tiny little loophole because that DNA is the biggest part of this case. And that makes me uncomfortable, y'all. And this is just me talking to y'all like if we was sitting on my back porch, okay? It gives me Jose Baez vibes. Y'all remember that watched the Casey Anthony trial. He pulled out every stunt in the book. You never knew the next person that was coming to testify, what was going to come out of his mouth. When Jose Baez got up there to do his opening statements,
you're going to hear all kinds of bizarre family behavior.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I think she makes a good point to leave it on, though, that that is a proven defense strategy. But I think that she gives such a kind of an eloquent description of, like, in layman's terms, like how the unknown evidence and why maybe nobody's really leaning on it or even bothering to test it. Although if it were me and it were my defense, I would be all over it. So I don't know.
well, I mean, she's right that all they need to do is create reasonable doubt. So introducing other DNA could create a reasonable doubt, right? That it's just not his. But, you know, I think that the defense attorneys are grasping at straws here, and they're trying anything that they can to set this up in order to put the reasonable doubt. Now, while you were playing that video, I was scouring through the affidavit that I have right here. And that was interesting because she pulled up a quote from there. It's not the same. It's not the same as it is in here. Okay. Because this is backwards, but it doesn't mention, it mentions about, I'll just read it quickly. On December 27th, 2022, Pennsylvania agents recovered the trash from Kohberger family residence. The evidence was sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing. The lab, and I'm paraphrasing here, the lab reported that a DNA profile obtained from the trash and the DNA profile obtained from the sheath identified a male as not being excluded as the biological father of suspect profile. and then it stops after it says at least 99.9998% of the male population would be expected to be excluded from the possibility of being the suspect's biological father. It doesn't mention anything about additional DNA from 2 unidentified males people. It doesn't say that in the affidavit. So I'm curious where she pulled that up from.
Yeah, well, when you say she, do you mean Christina? She was playing the courtroom. She was playing Ann Taylor in the courtroom.
Yeah, no. She pulled up she showed a quick quote about she showed like from the affidavit, and it doesn't match the affidavit.
Interesting. Oh, gee, good catch. I'm gonna I'll go back and compare those two.
Go back and look at that after, and then we'll report back on that, because it could be it's from a different document that I don't have. I did find I have a 166 page document that I sent to you, but I don't think either of us had to have the chance to really go through it. But maybe it's in there, and if it is, I'll find it.
What I can show you, but I have the document. I wonder if we can look at it right now. I have the document right here. Let me just make sure that, okay, that's coming through. And what's kind of cool about it is that what if you have a keyword? Oh shoot, it's not going to work.
I'm just looking at Exhibit A, the statement of Brett Payne. That's not in that. So
it's not in that. Okay,
not in that. So I just think we'll go through all the other documents. There it is, 166 pages. I don't know. I mean, pull up. Can you do a search for DNA?
Is we know Ann Taylor referenced it, so we know it's somewhere. Okay.
Well, she showed it in a document, so it's in some document. It's just not where I would expect to see it.
All right, I'm putting in lab, and we've got 42 matches. What else? Other keywords?
It was around. It referenced a date of December 22nd, I think, or December.
Okay, good, because this is the 30th of October. Let me keep going.
Yeah, it had something with December.
This is December 30th. Order
That's
findings, conclusion, motion, sealed documents are an attempt in sealing requirements that shall be available for public inspection and copying.
Nope.
Let's keep going.
It said something about the Idaho State Lab.
It wasn't handwritten, it was like an actual document.
It was out of a document. No, it speaks about the lab analysis. Like,
I'm going to pull it up. It's page 43. Hold on. So you guys can see it too. $43. Okay.
Ooh.
You little. Okay, I'm just going to, here we go. Here we go. So I have been informed that Detective Junior Talbot of the Idaho State Police that on November 13th, a sheaf was recovered on King Road residence under or next to the bodies of Madison Mogan. The Ohio State Crime Lab obtained male DNA profile, suspect profile from the sheaf. This also referred to in Sergeant Blaker's sworn statement in Exhibit A. I wonder if I should.
I have Exhibit A right here.
And so that's what you're reading?
That's what I read from Exhibit A, where it doesn't mention the 2 unidentified male DNA. It just speaks about the DNA matching, and it's on page 18 of the affidavit, the last page.
That is an interesting angle that we could definitely pursue a little bit, that we might want to look a little bit more. I mean, I don't know how much you guys want me to keep digging.
I don't know. Let's do it after.
Yeah. But I mean, but back to, just making sure that I'm giving a full reaction. I really do appreciate the way that Christina put that out there eloquently, because I think a lot of people are avoiding bringing up this unknown male DNA because they don't want to say things that might taint the jury pool, so to speak, and which I think is responsible. But I think she does a good job of explaining the profiles. I think without knowing how it's worded, we don't know if it's like, it could be blood DNA and not just.
She mentioned touch DNA, and I don't know, when she referenced it, she said touch DNA. So I don't know if she knows that, if she's assuming that, or what.
And I mean, for this video, if we're trying to give a juror's reaction, it's not official evidence if we can't put it in front of you.
Right.
And it's, so I would have to say, at this point, without us even finding it in documents, like, it's a non-issue, because I don't know how it could be brought up in court in front of a
I
jury.
don't either. I mean, look, let's face it. Okay. They're going to find male DNA all over that house. To Christina's point, it was a college house.
Right.
There were males in there all the time. I mean, there were. I mean, those girls had parties that they didn't even attend. People had parties in that house without them even being there. So it's going to be everywhere. Now, I can see how Ann Taylor would want to introduce that and try to put doubt in the juror's mind. But if I'm a juror, then I'm saying, he didn't mean to leave that sheath there. And she's right. He's stewing inside, I'm sure, and pissed that he made a mistake like that, leaving that behind. He didn't intend to leave that sheath behind. So, but on that sheath was his DNA. And, I think that Kohberger prides himself on his intelligence, and he thinks he's smarter than everybody out there, including his own attorneys. This is just my opinion. And because of that, he thought if he did this, allegedly, right, he thought he committed the perfect crime. And he's very particular with things. Like when they arrested him, he was in his parents' kitchen wearing surgical gloves that his sister said he wore all the time, 24/7, ever since arriving home. And he was putting anything with his DNA into Ziploc bags. And the police said with the intent of then throwing them away elsewhere, not in his, so he wasn't thinking like, wow, they could get my dad's DNA and then tie it to me. He was just protecting his own DNA.
I wonder if that's going to be something that the prosecution actually brings up in court, because I think that's actually pretty powerful.
I think it's powerful.
Like, it left an impression on you just coming into this case. And I hope that is part of their prosecution and talking about that, because that's so sus. Like, how could it be anything else?
And what really kind of hit home for me was his sister. His own sister said to the parents, hey, look, Bryan lived right near where those murders took place in Idaho. And he was there at the time of those murders. He's not now. And they say he drives a white. It was his sister. His own sister said to the parents, hey, look, Bryan lived right near where those murders took place in Idaho. And he was there at the time of those murders. He's not now. And they say he drives a white Elantra. Bryan drives a white Elantra. And Bryan's been wearing gloves. Why is he wearing gloves? This is really weird, right? And so the family went out to the car to try to look for anything that might be evidence or more, tie him to something. And they couldn't find anything because he'd already bleached the entire car. He'd already cleaned it out, like, thoroughly. So, but the sister said, I think Bryan may be involved in this. His own sister.
I'm wondering if that's actually part of the evidence. Because I remember hearing something about Bryan Kohberger's sister reporting him about something. I'm Googling it right now because I'd be interested to know if that's actually in some sort of official document, like.
Let me see if I can find it. There's so much, Kiki. We could go on and on and on about, there's so many parts to this, and we might do this another time, but when we were talking about the different events that led up to this, like the one coworker who had reported that things were being moved around in her apartment, but not stolen, and reported to her good friend, Bryan, who Bryan offered to then set up security cameras in her home, to which he had the access and internet password to, right? So that's kind of odd, right? And then there was the case of the girl whose suitcase was taken out of her car and gone through and items that were in her car were shoved into her suitcase, and her underwear from her suitcase was taken out and shoved into her console.
And I'm actually trying to pull any of this up, because here's the thing is, like, I have heard so much speculation on the internet since this case started. For me, like, I don't know which is innuendo, which is somebody getting their 15 minutes of fame, which is somebody trying to monetize or capitalize on this case, which pulls in, on certain channels to report on this. When they report on this, they'll get like 5 times as amount as views if they report on this than any other crime. So it's hard for me to know if this is just, you know what I mean? So like, I'm Googling right now just because I'd be curious to know if she's, again, that's evidence that's going to be in court, or if it's just another one of those little,
they'll bring her in to testify.
And oh gosh, someone's just coming.
That was the fall of 2022 that the woman that he put the cameras into her.
I think that's establishing history. And there's one other thing you told me about yesterday, which I think you said that you saw evidence of something that you learned about in psychology called the
homicidal triangle.
The CK triangle, yeah.
Homicidal triangle, they call it.
Would you tell that to the audience? I think it'd be interesting because this is this marriage, apparently.
So, in studying serial killers and psychopaths and sociopaths, they've found that there are 3 criteria that if you look back into their history, that they all possess, right? And it's called the homicidal triad or triangle. And so there's 3 things. One is chronic bedwetting, which on its own is no big deal. My older son had that. He'll kill me if he ever sees this. Fire starting, and they're called animal getters. So it means cruelty to animals, and then it escalates into killing animals. So when you see in their youth, right, they can be a history of cruelty to animals, killing animals, bedwetting, fire starting. And it's not just like when we were talking about, right? I started a fire with a magnifying glass with my cousin once with some dry grass. Right. I'm not a serial killer, and I'm not a psychopath. But so kids, it's not just that. It's like the fire starting will turn into arson, right? Unexplained fires, people can't finding the neighbor's cat dead, or that's the kind of stuff. So it's almost like they're practicing on animals before getting into being a serial killer. I'm not talking about Bryan here. I'm talking about just in general. But that's found.
How I've heard it said before, you could correct me if I'm wrong, it's like, it's not that it's present in all of these people. It's not that people that do that, they all become but all CKs have this triad in their history growing up.
And so it's scary. So I think that if we look back at Bryan's, and this will all come out, right? They're going to find out what did he do as a youngster, and don't be surprised if you find some of these things, especially the animal piece.
Yeah. Well, thank you for giving us your research on that, your perspective.
I was just going to mention, just for the heck of it, where I found that information about the sister saying that that Bryan lived near the murders when they happened, and that they should consider that he may be responsible. That's what she said. This was on the Dateline episode, season 31, episode 32, where it spoke about that.
She said that on Dateline?
They didn't show her, but it was reported on that Dateline episode that the sister had said that Bryan had been wearing the latex gloves even in the house. This is his older sister, said to the family that Bryan lived near the murders when they happened, and that they should consider that he may be responsible. And so then they went out and they looked in his car for evidence.
So I missed it. Who did they say that to? They said it directly to
the sister
Dateline?
Said it to her parents, like said to the family, look.
Yeah, but who told Dateline?
Oh, I don't. I was. That's just from my notes from the episode. It was on
I'm
that.
going to look into that. That's
Yeah.
because I mean, right there, I mean, your own family turns on you.
And I don't know that she was turning, but now his whole this is also interesting. Both of his sisters work in the mental health field. They both studied psychology.
They should see a red flag.
So they both studied psychology. And so they're kind of alert to these things. So I think that the latex gloves, the piecing it together, you know, so yeah, one of the sisters is a mental health therapist, and I forget what the other one did, but both in that field. So yeah, it would kind of be suspect to them, I think. And that's why they said, you know, look, we need to look into this more. This is, I mean, how weird, right? He drives the same car. He's wearing gloves. He lived right near there. Like, and now he's all the way across the country home, and he's still
I
wearing
wonder
gloves.
if we're going to find out, since everything's sealed. This is what's coming into my head as you're saying this, is like, that's so powerful. I wonder if there was a tip from
I
one
think,
of them.
and I'll tell
it's
you what,
not been reported yet. We don't know.
right. And what's happening with the things that are sealed, they're only being sealed until they no longer need to be. So what's happening is, and this is in that 166-page document, a little bit that I read, they're sealing things to protect from, right, like they don't want it to get out before this. Well, once they have the hearing and it's presented in court, now it can be unsealed because there's no longer a reason for it to be sealed. So I think we're going to see things that are sealed becoming unsealed as we go.
Before the case even starts.
Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That must be
Not
right.
everything, not everything. But once we get in underway with the trial, which they're still saying is going to be in October, you know.
Although this is a really surreal podcast, I'm glad we did this. It's really, for two parts for me, you know, it's wanting justice for this young group of people, but it's also the fact that you want to make sure that if there isn't another person involved, that, you know,
Right.
that we have the right person, and society wants to make sure that whoever was capable of doing this is the one that is now taken away from society. And